Ryan Mitchell grabbed the microphone during his best man speech at Madison's wedding and called me a charity case who should be grateful anyone looked at me twice. The room erupted in polite, nervous laughter until the quiet bartender set down his towel, stepped over the bar with lethal grace, and leveled my ex with a single look. As he pulled me to his side, his voice cut through the room like a blade. "She isn't a charity case. She's with me. And I own this entire building." Chapter 1. The Gilded Cage. It felt like walking into a trap, one made of crystal chandeliers, silk tablecloths, and whispered cruelty. Emily stopped at the edge of the Grand Marquis ballroom, her breath catching in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to walk back through those mahogany doors, to get in her car and drive until the city lights disappeared. But she couldn't, because that would let them win. She gripped her small beaded clutch so tight her knuckles turned white. The room was loud, a chaotic symphony of clinking champagne flutes and forced laughter. It reeked of expensive perfume and catered lobster. But underneath that, it smelled like judgment. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't block out the voices. "Is that her?" a whisper drifted from her left. "The one Ryan dumped." Another voice, sharper, crueler. "I can't believe she actually showed up." Emily kept her chin level. She focused on the marble tiles beneath her feet, counting them. 1, 2, 3. If she stared hard enough, maybe the floor would open up and swallow her whole. That would be easier than seeing him. Ryan. Just the name made her stomach twist. It wasn't love anymore, not even close. It was shame, hot, sticky shame that coated her skin like oil. He had discarded her like last season's fashion, told her she was too common for his family's social circle. And now here she was, at his fiancée Madison's wedding reception, watching him parade his victory around like a trophy. What's worse, she had promised Sarah she'd come. She had to smile about it. She took a shaky step forward. Her emerald green dress, the one Sarah convinced her to buy, the one that cost 2 weeks' salary, felt too tight. Too revealing. She felt exposed, like a deer standing in a clearing while hunters loaded their rifles. She needed a drink. In fact, she needed 5. She scanned the room, her eyes darting over the crowd, preening in their designer labels. It all felt fake, a lie painted over teeth and ambition. Then she saw it. The bar. It was tucked away in the corner, away from the dance floor, made of dark mahogany that looked solid enough to hide behind, an island in the middle of a storm. As if pulled by an invisible string, she moved toward it. She didn't look left, she didn't look right, she just walked, her heels clicking a lonely rhythm on the polished stone. She passed a cluster of Madison's sorority sisters. They went silent as she approached. Their silence was louder than their words. It judged her. It mocked her. Unwanted, not good enough, yesterday's news. Still, Emily kept walking. She reached the bar and gripped the cool wood like a lifeline. She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Safe. Or as safe as she could be in a room full of people who wanted to tear her apart with their smiles. She slid onto the tall leather stool, turning her back to the party. She hunched her shoulders slightly, making herself smaller. If she stayed invisible, maybe she could survive the night without bleeding. But deep down, in the hollow place where her confidence used to live, she knew better. The night was young, and the monsters were just getting started. He hated weddings. Jack Reynolds polished a crystal tumbler, his movements slow, methodical. To anyone watching, he was just a bartender, just part of the scenery. A tall guy in a pressed white shirt and black vest serving overpriced cocktails to the elite. But they weren't watching. They never watched the help. That was their mistake. Because if they looked, really looked, they would see that his hands were too steady for someone who made drinks for a living. They would see that his eyes weren't serving. They were calculating. He set the glass down with a soft clink against the bar top. The ballroom was a circus. It reeked of ego and desperation. Designer cologne hung in the air like smog, thick and choking. Every man in the room was performing, chest puffed out, voice a little too loud, trying to prove something to someone who didn't care. Jack fought the urge to roll his eyes. He could buy and sell half of them before breakfast and destroy the other half by lunch. But he wasn't here to flex. He was here to work. There was a rat in Ryan Mitchell's family business, someone leaking proprietary tech data from Mitchell Industries, one of Jack's potential acquisition targets. Jack had spent 6 months building the paper trail. Now he just needed the face. And the best way to get close to the Mitchells? Blend into the background at their golden boy's wedding. So he stood here, wiping glasses, pouring champagne, waiting for someone to slip. He scanned the crowd again, his eyes sharp, dissecting every interaction, every nervous laugh, every too long conversation. Nothing yet, just pompous idiots celebrating mediocrity. He sighed, a low rumble in his chest, and grabbed a lime and a paring knife. He sliced the fruit with surgical precision. Slice, slice, slice. The blade moved with lethal efficiency. Without warning, the air shifted. A scent hit him. It didn't smell like the others. It didn't smell like synthetic roses or expensive champagne. It smelled clean, like rain hitting concrete after a long drought, like ozone before lightning strikes. And something else underneath. Salt, old wounds, quiet sadness. Jack looked up. A woman was walking toward his bar. She wore emerald green, the color of deep forest shadows. She wasn't strutting, she was surviving. He could see it in the tension of her shoulders, the way she held herself like she was bracing for impact. She walked like she expected to be hit. Something primal stirred in his chest. Who hurt you? Jack's jaw tightened. She reached the bar and grabbed it like a drowning person grabbing driftwood. She sat down, turning her back to the room, hiding. She was stunning, not in the polished, Instagram-perfect way the other guests were. She was beautiful like wildflowers growing through cracked pavement. Dark hair that caught the amber light, pale skin, and eyes that held too many sleepless nights. She didn't look at him. She just stared at the wood grain, her hands trembling slightly. Strange. Most people at events like this ignored him, or they treated him like a servant, snapping their fingers, demanding attention. But she treated him like a wall, like he was something solid she could lean against without being judged. Jack wiped his hands on a towel and moved toward her, keeping his movements slow, unthreatening. He knew who she was, Emily Carter. He'd seen her photograph in the background of Ryan Mitchell's social media months ago, always slightly out of frame, always smiling a little too hard. Then she disappeared from the feed entirely. Jack had wondered why. Now, watching the way she made herself small, the way her breath came shallow and quick, he knew. And something dark and protective unfurled in his chest. He reached for a bottle on the top shelf, the 30-year Macallan that wasn't on the menu, the one he kept for himself, and poured 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. He slid it across the bar toward her. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds. "You look like you need this more than they deserve champagne," Jack said, his voice low, meant only for her. For the first time all night, Emily Carter smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. And Jack Reynolds made a decision that would change everything. He was going to ruin Ryan Mitchell, and he was going to make sure this woman never looked that afraid again. Emily lifted the crystal tumbler to her lips and took a small sip. The whiskey burned, smooth fire that traced a path down her throat and settled warm in her chest. It tasted expensive, like leather and smoke, and things she couldn't afford. She set the glass down carefully, her fingers lingering on the cut crystal. "Thank you," she whispered, not quite meeting his eyes. The bartender didn't respond right away. He just nodded once, a slight dip of his chin, and went back to polishing glasses. But she could feel him there, solid, present, not demanding anything from her. It was the first time all evening someone had been near her without wanting something. Behind her, the party crescendoed. A Bruno Mars song pulsed through the speakers, bass heavy enough to feel in her sternum. Laughter erupted from the head table, Madison's signature laugh, high and performative, designed to draw attention. Emily's shoulders tensed reflexively. "You don't have to look," the bartender said quietly, not glancing up from his work. "Whatever is happening back there, you don't owe it your attention." Emily blinked. She turned slightly, studying him for the first time. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair pushed back from a face that was all sharp angles and quiet intensity. His hands moved with precision as he worked, and there was something about the way he stood that felt different, like he was anchoring the entire corner of the room through sheer presence alone. "Do you always read minds?" she asked, attempting lightness. The corner of his mouth lifted, almost a smile. "Only when people are easy to read." "Am I easy to read?" "You're terrified," he said simply, meeting her eyes for the first time. His gaze was dark, direct, unsettling in its honesty. "You're here because someone you love asked you to be, and you'd rather be literally anywhere else on the planet." Emily's breath caught. She looked away, down at her drink. "That obvious?" "To me." He set down the glass he'd been polishing. "Most people here are too busy looking at themselves to notice anyone else." She took another sip of whiskey, longer this time, letting it fortify her. The truth was, he was right. She'd come tonight because Sarah had begged her to. "Please, Em, I know it's hard, but I can't imagine getting married without you there. Ryan's just the best man. You don't have to talk to him. Just come. For me." And Emily had come, because that's what she did. She showed up, she smiled, she made herself small and tried not to cause problems, even when it was killing her. "Emily Carter?" The voice came from behind her, male, vaguely familiar, dripping with false warmth. Emily's entire body went rigid. She turned slowly. Trevor Hutchins stood there, Ryan's college roommate, holding a tumbler of bourbon and wearing a smirk that made her skin crawl. He'd always looked at her like she was a joke he was in on and she wasn't. "Wow," Trevor said, his eyes traveling down her dress in a way that made her want to shower. Emily's throat tightened. She felt the bartender go very still beside her. "Sarah's my best friend," Emily said quietly, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Why wouldn't I be here?" Trevor laughed, that braying fraternity house laugh. "Come on, your ex is literally marrying Madison Blake, the Madison Blake, CEO's daughter, Forbes 20 under 30. He leaned in, bourbon breath hot on her face. Must sting in knowing what an upgrade he made. The words hit like physical blows. Emily's fingers tightened around her glass. She wanted to say something cutting, something that would wipe that smug expression off his face, but her mind went blank, the way it always did when she was cornered. "You're done here." The bartender's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Low, dangerous, absolutely certain. Trevor straightened, finally noticing the man behind the bar. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." The bartender set down his towel with deliberate care. "The lady doesn't want to talk to you, so you're done." Trevor's face flushed red. "Do you know who I am? I'm a groomsman at this wedding. You're the fucking help. You don't get to do." "I get to do whatever I want." The bartender's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. Emily felt it, a coiled tension, like watching a storm build on the horizon. I needed to walk away. For a long moment, Trevor just stared. His jaw worked like he was chewing on a response, but something in the bartender's eyes made him reconsider. "Whatever," Trevor finally muttered. He jabbed a finger at Emily. "Ryan was right about you, not worth the effort." He turned and stalked back toward the crowd, shoulders tight with wounded pride. Emily released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking again. "You okay?" the bartender asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice, then shook her head, then laughed, a broken, waterlogged sound. "No, not really, but I will be." He poured another drink without asking. This time, he poured one for himself. "Jack," he said, raising his glass slightly. "Jack Reynolds." "Emily." She clinked her glass against his, grateful for the simple human connection. "Thank you for that." "Don't thank me yet," Jack said, and something flickered across his face, something that looked almost like anger. "The night's not over." He was looking past her now, toward the head table, where Ryan Mitchell stood, adjusting his microphone. And Emily's stomach dropped, because she knew that look on Ryan's face. He was about to make a speech. The microphone screeched feedback, and the room went quiet. Ryan Mitchell stood at the head table, champagne flute in one hand, microphone in the other, grinning like a game show host. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his hair perfectly styled, his teeth perfectly white. Everything about him was perfectly calculated. Emily's stomach turned to ice. "Can I have everyone's attention?" Ryan's voice boomed through the speakers, warm and charming. The crowd turned toward him, faces eager. Madison sat beside him, radiant in her lace gown, touching his arm affectionately. Emily started to turn back to the bar, to make herself invisible again. "Don't," Jack said quietly beside her. His voice was hard. "Don't give him your back." She froze, something in his tone making her listen. Ryan continued, his smile widening. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate this incredible woman." He gestured to Madison, who beamed. "But before we cut the cake, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the journey that brought me here." Emily's blood went cold. No, he wouldn't. Not here, not now. "See, some of you know that before I met Madison, I was in let's call it a learning experience." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Ryan's eyes scanned the room and landed directly on Emily. His smile sharpened. "I dated someone who, looking back, taught me everything I didn't want in a partner." The whiskey curdled in Emily's stomach. "I won't name names," Ryan said, voice dripping with false magnanimity. "But let's just say she's here tonight, probably wondering why she wasn't good enough." More laughter, nervous this time. People were starting to look around. The truth is, some people are meant for greatness, and some people are meant to, well, settle. I'm just grateful I recognized the difference before it was too late. Emily couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. Every eye in the ballroom was searching for her, landing on her, dissecting her. Ryan raised his glass. "So here's to knowing your worth, and to Madison, a woman who actually meets the standard. Cheers!" "Cheers!" the crowd echoed, glasses raised. Emily sat frozen, her face burning, tears pricking hot behind her eyes. She would not cry. She would not give him that satisfaction. "Emily!" Jack's voice was closer now, urgent. She shook her head, standing abruptly. "I need to go. I need to leave." She turned toward the exit, vision blurring. Behind her, she heard Ryan's voice again, amplified and cruel. "Oh, and Emily, Thanks for coming, really. It means so much that you could be here to watch me marry up." The laughter that followed was like knives. Emily stopped walking. Something inside her, something that had been bending and bending for years, finally cracked. She turned back toward the head table, her hands clenched into fists, ready to scream, ready to throw her drink, ready to do something. The sound of shattering glass cut through the ballroom like a gunshot. Everyone turned toward the bar. Jack Reynolds stood there, a broken champagne flute in his hand, shards glittering on the mahogany. His expression had transformed, no longer the quiet, accommodating bartender. His jaw was set, his eyes dark with barely controlled fury. He stepped out from behind the bar. Not the casual movement of an employee, the purposeful stride of someone who owned every inch of space he walked through. "Ryan Mitchell," he said, his voice cutting across the silent ballroom with terrifying clarity. He didn't need the microphone. "That's enough." Ryan blinked, confused. "Excuse me? Who the hell?" "Jack Reynolds." He said it like a challenge, like a declaration of war. The color drained from Ryan's face. His mouth opened, closed. "Mr. Reynolds, I didn't realize." "Clearly." Jack's voice was ice. He crossed the ballroom in long strides, every eye following him. He stopped directly in front of Ryan, and despite the microphone, despite the elevated head table, Jack somehow seemed taller. "You've been trying to get a meeting with me for 6 months. Your father's been calling my office weekly, begging for Reynolds Tech to consider Mitchell Industries as an acquisition target." Ryan's face went from white to red. "Sir, I can explain. You just humiliated a woman at your own wedding to make yourself feel important." Jack's words were measured, deadly. "You used your platform to punch down at someone who has more grace in her silence than you'll ever have in your entire existence." He leaned in slightly. "Do you know what that tells me about your character? About the kind of man who'd run your father's company?" The ballroom was a tomb. No one breathed. Madison's hand had flown to her mouth. Sarah stood near the dance floor, eyes wide. "It tells me," Jack continued, his eyes black fire, "that you're exactly the kind of liability I destroy, not acquire." Ryan's voice came out strangled. "Mr. Reynolds, please, it's a joke. I was just—" "You weren't joking." Jack's eyes were fire. "You were being cruel because cruelty is the only power you understand." He turned then, walking back toward the bar where Emily stood frozen in shock. Jack stopped beside her, and when he looked at her, his expression softened just slightly. "You okay?" Emily nodded numbly, unable to form words. Jack turned back to the room, to Ryan standing there like a puppet with cut strings, to the hundreds of guests staring in stunned silence. For the record, Emily Carter is not a learning experience. She's not leftovers. She's not someone who settled. He placed a hand gently on the small of her back, protective, claiming, absolute. "She's with me, and if anyone here has a problem with that, you can take it up with Reynolds Tech's legal team." The silence stretched like pulled taffy. Then Sarah started clapping, slow at first, then faster. Within seconds, half the ballroom joined her, tentative applause that built to something thunderous. Ryan stood at the microphone, his perfect wedding moment shattered into as many pieces as the champagne flute. And Emily Carter, for the first time in years, didn't feel small at all. Emily's legs moved on autopilot, carrying her through the crowd that parted like water. Faces blurred past, some sympathetic, some scandalized, all hungry for the next piece of gossip. She couldn't think, couldn't process what had just happened. Jack Reynolds, the Jack Reynolds. The bartender was a billionaire, and he'd just claimed her in front of 200 people. Emily, wait!" Sarah's voice cut through the fog. A hand grabbed her elbow, gentle but firm, steering her toward a side hallway. "Come on, this way." They burst through a service door into a quiet corridor. The sounds of the ballroom faded to a muffled hum behind thick walls. Emily's heels clicked against polished concrete as Sarah pulled her deeper into the building's interior. "I'm going to kill him," Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage. "I'm going to actually murder Ryan Mitchell. I didn't know he was going to. God, Em, I'm so sorry. If I'd known he was planning that." "It's not your fault." Emily's voice sounded distant, not quite her own. She leaned against the cool wall, pressing her palms flat against it. "He's always been like this. I just forgot how much he enjoys an audience." Sarah's expression crumpled. She pulled Emily into a fierce hug. "You didn't deserve that. Any of it." Emily closed her eyes, breathing in her familiar perfume, something floral and grounding. I do know that. It's just—" "Excuse me." They both turned. Jack Reynolds stood at the end of the hallway, his white shirt slightly untucked now, his expression unreadable. He'd left his vest and apron behind. Without the bartender costume, he looked different, sharper, more dangerous, like a blade that had been hiding in a sheath. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to talk." Sarah stepped in front of Emily protectively. "I think you've done enough talking for one night." Jack's jaw tightened. "I'm not here to hurt her." "No, you're just here to use her as a prop in whatever game you're playing with Ryan," Sarah's eyes flashed. "Emily's not a chess piece." "I know that." "Do you?" Sarah challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, you just dragged her into something without asking." "Sarah," Emily touched her friend's shoulder gently. "It's okay. I want to hear what he has to say." Sarah looked back at her, conflict clear on her face. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, but I'm staying right here." She crossed her arms and planted herself like a guardian, glaring at Jack. Jack nodded, accepting this. He took a few steps closer, maintaining a respectful distance. "What I did in there, I apologize if I overstepped. That wasn't the plan." "You had a plan?" Emily asked quietly. "I had surveillance. I've been investigating Mitchell Industries for corporate espionage. They've been stealing proprietary technology from smaller startups and passing it off as their own. I needed to get close to the family, see who was orchestrating it, so I went undercover as venue staff." Emily's mind spun. "You've been undercover, at a wedding, as a bartender." "I've done stranger things for due diligence." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But when I saw Ryan up there, using that microphone like a weapon against you," the smile disappeared. "I couldn't let it stand." "So you blew your cover," Emily said slowly, pieces clicking together. "You exposed yourself to protect someone you don't even know." Jack's dark eyes met hers. "I know enough." The air between them felt charged, electric. Sarah cleared her throat. "Okay, so you're some kind of billionaire vigilante. Great, fascinating. But what does this have to do with Emily now?" Jack's expression shifted, calculating, strategic. "Ryan won't let this go. He's humiliated, and men like him don't handle humiliation well. He'll come after both of us, me for torpedoing his business deal, Emily for being associated with me." "Let him try," Emily said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. "I'm done being afraid of Ryan Mitchell." "I believe you." Jack's gaze intensified. "Which is why I have a proposition." Sarah groaned. "Of course you do." Jack ignored her, his attention fixed on Emily. "I need to finish this investigation. I'm close. I have evidence for the tech theft, but I need the paper trail that leads to whoever's giving the orders. Could be Ryan, could be his father, could be someone else in their organization. But now that I've exposed myself, they'll lock everything down." "So you're screwed," Sarah summarized. "Unless," Jack continued, "I have a legitimate reason to stay close to the family, a reason they can't refuse without causing a bigger scene than what just happened." Understanding dawned cold and clear. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend." "Fiancé," he corrected. "It needs to be serious enough that they can't ignore it. Ryan will try to warn his father off from doing business with me, but if we're engaged, if there's a personal connection, it complicates things, buys me time to get what I need." Emily laughed, the sound hollow. "This is insane. You're asking me to fake an engagement with a man I met 2 hours ago." "I'm asking you to help me destroy the people who hurt you." Jack's voice dropped. "Ryan Mitchell has been stealing from innovators, crushing small businesses, ruining lives, all to feed his father's ego and his own greed, and he does it while making people like you feel small." He paused. "I can take him down, but I need your help." Emily stared at him, at this stranger who'd stepped between her and humiliation, who'd shattered glass and his own carefully laid plans because he couldn't watch cruelty go unchallenged. "What's in it for Emily?" Sarah demanded. Jack pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out. "Name your price. Money, connections, a job at Reynolds Tech, revenge. Whatever you need to make this worth your time. I don't make empty promises." Emily took the card. It was heavy stock, embossed, simple. Jack Reynolds, CEO, Reynolds Tech. She thought about Ryan's face when Jack had spoken, the fear, the panic, the delicious, terrifying collapse of his superiority. She thought about spending years making herself smaller, quieter, less, all to avoid Ryan's cutting remarks. She looked up at Jack Reynolds. "I want him to feel what I felt. I want him to know what it's like to be powerless." Jack's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe, or recognition. "Then we have a deal," he said. Sarah grabbed Emily's arm. "Em, are you sure about this?" Emily wasn't sure about anything, but for the first time in years, she felt something other than shame. She felt dangerous. "I'm sure," Emily said. Jack extended his hand. Emily shook it and sealed a bargain that would either destroy them both or set them free. The week that followed felt like living in someone else's life. Emily spent her days in Jack's world, a choreographed performance of power lunches, strategy meetings, and what Jack called visibility opportunities. She learned to smile for cameras outside Michelin-starred restaurants, to navigate conversations with venture capitalists who spoke in acronyms and valuations, to wear heels that cost more than her college textbooks without wincing. Jack's assistant, a formidable woman named Claire, who could organize a hostile takeover before breakfast, became Emily's shadow. Wardrobe fittings, media training, briefings on who mattered and who didn't. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. But it was the quiet moments that unsettled her most. Like now, Thursday evening in Jack's penthouse apartment. Not the office, but his actual home. He'd insisted she see it before the gala, said she needed to be comfortable in his space in case reporters asked questions. The apartment was nothing like she'd expected. Yes, there were floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that made her dizzy. Yes, there was expensive furniture and art that probably belonged in museums. But there were also books, shelves and shelves of them, worn paperbacks mixed with leather-bound classics. A laptop sat open on the coffee table, surrounded by scattered notes. A guitar leaned against the wall, its case covered in stickers from places Emily had never been. It looked lived in, human. Jack emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 wine glasses and a bottle. He'd changed from his suit into jeans and a dark Henley that made him look younger, less like a CEO and more like the bartender she'd first met. "You're staring," he said, pouring wine the color of garnets. Emily settled onto the leather couch. "I'm trying to reconcile all the versions of you." "Good luck with that." Jack handed her a glass and sat beside her, close enough to feel his warmth, far enough to maintain propriety. "I'm still working on it myself." Outside, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. The sun had set an hour ago, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. "Can I ask you something?" Emily said. "You can ask me anything." "Why did you really go undercover at that wedding?" She turned to face him. "I know you said it was about the investigation, but you could have sent someone else. You're the CEO. You don't have to pour drinks to catch corporate spies." Jack was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "My first company, before Reynolds Tech, was a small cybersecurity startup. 4 of us in a garage, living on ramen and ambition." He stared out at the city. "We developed an encryption algorithm that could have changed everything, made digital privacy accessible to everyone, not just people who could afford it." Emily waited, sensing there was more. "Mitchell Industries approached us with an acquisition offer. We were broke, desperate. The offer seemed generous." Jack's jaw tightened. "We signed. 3 months later, they gutted the company, fired everyone except me, and buried the technology. Turned out they didn't want the algorithm. They wanted to make sure no one else could have it. It threatened their existing contracts with government agencies." "They killed it," Emily said softly. "They killed your dream." "They killed more than that." Jack's eyes were dark with old anger. "One of my partners, David Chen, had invested everything, his life savings, money borrowed from family. When Mitchell Industries dissolved the company, he lost it all. Last I heard, he's working tech support in Sacramento, barely making rent." Emily's chest tightened. "So this isn't just about corporate espionage. It's personal," Jack admitted. "I rebuilt, I survived, but they've done this to dozens of companies, small operations with big ideas. They target founders who are vulnerable, make promises they never intend to keep, and then strip the companies for parts." He finally looked at her. "I went undercover because I needed to understand how deep the corruption goes, and because men like Ryan Mitchell don't see the help. They talk freely around servers and bartenders, like we're furniture." "You wanted them to underestimate you." "I needed them to." Jack set down his wine glass. "But then you walked up to that bar, and suddenly the mission got a lot more complicated." Emily's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Jack turned toward her, his expression unguarded in a way she'd never seen. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "You were supposed to be collateral, background noise, another guest at another wedding. But then I saw the way you held yourself together, the way you refused to cry even when everything in you wanted to. And I realized that Ryan Mitchell didn't just steal from companies, he steals from people. He takes their confidence, their joy, their sense of worth, and he does it because he can." Emily's eyes burned. Jack said quietly, "You asked why I went undercover. The truth, I went because I'm tired of watching people like him win. I'm tired of a world where cruelty gets rewarded and kindness gets punished." His hand lingered near her face, not quite touching. "And when he stood up there and tried to humiliate you, I couldn't just stand there and let it happen." Emily set down her own glass with trembling hands. "You barely knew me." "I knew enough." Jack's voice was rough. "I knew you deserved better, and I knew if I didn't step in, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." The air between them felt charged, electric. Emily could hear her own heartbeat, loud in the quiet apartment. "I thought losing Ryan was the worst thing that ever happened to me," she whispered. "I thought I'd failed somehow, that I wasn't enough." "Emily?" "But you're right." She looked up at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. "It wasn't heartbreak, it was escape. He was destroying me one comment at a time, and I was so desperate to be loved that I let him." Jack's hand cupped her face now, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "You are enough. You've always been enough. He was the one who was lacking." Emily leaned into his touch, something in her chest cracking open. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Trust someone again. Trust you." Her voice broke slightly. "What if this is all just another performance? What if when you're done with the investigation, you disappear?" Jack's eyes searched hers. I can't promise you I'm perfect. I'm controlling, I work too much, and I have a hard time letting people in. His jaw tightened. But I can promise you this. Everything I've told you is real. The anger at Ryan, the reason I went undercover, the way I feel when I'm with you, it's all real. How do I know? Emily whispered. Instead of answering, Jack closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, questioning. Emily's hands found his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing under her palms. When she didn't pull away, Jack deepened the kiss, his fingers threading through her hair. Emily melted into this moment that felt both terrifying and inevitable. He tasted like wine and promises, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel afraid. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jack rested his forehead against hers. "That's how you know," he said quietly. Emily laughed, a broken, waterlogged sound. "That's not playing fair." "I never said I would." Jack's smile was crooked, genuine. "I'm trying to win here." "Win what?" "You." Before Emily could respond, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. She pulled back, frowning, and checked her screen. Her blood turned to ice. It was an email, no sender name, just a generic address. The subject line read, "The real Emily Carter." With shaking hands, she opened it. Photos loaded slowly, each one a punch to the gut. Her, younger, at college parties, red Solo cups, revealing clothes, dancing too close to people she barely remembered. Nothing truly scandalous, just normal college behavior, but photographed with careful intent to look as damaging as possible. The message below was short. "Looking forward to seeing you at the gala. Let's hope your new fiancé knows what kind of woman he's really getting. Or should we tell him ourselves? R and M." Jack was reading his own phone, his expression darkening with each passing second. When did he send this? Just now. Emily's hands trembled. "Jack, these photos, they're not... I was in college. Everyone did." "Emily." Jack's voice cut through her panic. "Breathe. Look at me." She did. His eyes were blazing with fury, but not at her. "There is nothing in these photos that matters," Jack said firmly. "Nothing. You were 20 years old, having fun at parties. That's called being human." "But Ryan and Madison are desperate." Jack stood, already pulling up contacts on his phone. "They're trying to scare you, to make you back out before the gala because they know we're a threat." He started pacing, his mind clearly racing through strategies. "I'll call my legal team. We can bury this before it sees daylight. Threaten them with defamation, harassment." "No." Jack stopped mid-stride. "What?" Emily stood, her initial panic crystallizing into something harder, something sharper. "No, don't call your lawyers." "Emily, if we don't act now, I'll handle it." Her voice was steady now, certain. "This is my fight, Jack. Ryan is trying to make me feel small again, trying to make me ashamed of who I am, but I'm done being ashamed." Jack studied her, conflict clear on his face. "Tell me what you're thinking." Emily looked at the photos again, seeing them differently now. Yes, she was young in them. Yes, she'd been carefree and imperfect, but she didn't look damaged. She looked alive. "I'm thinking," she said slowly, "that Ryan is betting I'll do what I've always done. Hide, apologize, make myself smaller to avoid conflict." She looked up at Jack. "What if I don't? What if I show up to that gala and own every single thing he's trying to weaponize?" A slow smile spread across Jack's face. "You want to call his bluff." "I want to break his power." Emily felt something fierce unfurl in her chest. "These photos, there's nothing actually wrong with them. The only way they hurt me is if I act like they should. But if I refuse to be ashamed, if I stand there next to you and dare him to make them public..." She trailed off, the plan forming as she spoke. "He loses." Jack crossed back to her, his eyes bright with something that looked like pride. "You understand what you're saying. If he releases these, you'll face judgment. People will talk. Let them talk. Emily's chin lifted. I'm tired of living in fear of Ryan Mitchell's opinions. He doesn't get to define me anymore. Jack's hands found her waist, pulling her close. Are you sure about this? Because once we commit to this path, there's no backing down. Ryan will escalate. Then we escalate faster. Emily surprised herself with the steel in her voice. You said you needed evidence of Mitchell Industries' corruption. Where is it? Mostly circumstantial right now. I need hard proof. Emails, financial records, something that directly ties the stolen technology to their company. And you think you can get that at the gala? Jack's expression shifted, calculation mixing with admiration. I know Mitchell's CTO will be there, Thomas Brennan. He's the one who actually implements the tech theft, but he's not a true believer. He does it because he's afraid of losing his job. If I can get him alone, away from Ryan and his father, I might be able to flip him. So we need him isolated, Emily said, her mind racing now. We need Ryan distracted. Emily. I'll distract Ryan. I'll respond to his email, tell him I want to talk before the gala, meet him somewhere public, somewhere I can record the conversation, let him think he's winning, let him gloat about the photos, and while he's busy trying to intimidate me, you corner Brennan. Jack stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You want to bait him. I want to destroy him. Emily felt the words settle in her bones, true and solid. These photos, there's nothing actually wrong with them. The only way they hurt me is if I act like they should. But if I refuse to be ashamed, if I stand there next to you and dare him to make them public. She trailed off, the plan forming as she spoke. He loses. Jack crossed back to her, his eyes bright with something that looked like pride. You understand what you're saying. If he releases these, you'll face judgment. People will talk. Let them talk. Emily's chin lifted. I'm tired of living in fear of Ryan Mitchell's opinions. He doesn't get to define me anymore. Jack's hands found her waist, pulling her close. Are you sure about this? Because once we commit to this path, there's no backing down. Ryan will escalate. Then we escalate faster. Emily surprised herself with the steel in her voice. You said you needed evidence of Mitchell Industries' corruption. Where is it? Mostly circumstantial right now. I need hard proof. Emails, financial records, something that directly ties the stolen technology to their company. And you think you can get that at the gala? Jack's expression shifted, calculation mixing with admiration. I know Mitchell's CTO will be there, Thomas Brennan. He's the one who actually implements the tech theft, but he's not a true believer. He does it because he's afraid of losing his job. If I can get him alone, away from Ryan and his father, I might be able to flip him. So we need him isolated, Emily said, her mind racing now. We need Ryan distracted. Emily. I'll distract Ryan. I'll respond to his email, tell him I want to talk before the gala, meet him somewhere public, somewhere I can record the conversation, let him think he's winning, let him gloat about the photos, and while he's busy trying to intimidate me, you corner Brennan. Jack stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You want to bait him. I want to destroy him. Emily felt the words settle in her bones, true and solid. These photos, there's nothing actually wrong with them. The only way they hurt me is if I act like they should. But if I refuse to be ashamed, if I stand there next to you and dare him to make them public. She trailed off, the plan forming as she spoke. He loses. Jack crossed back to her, his eyes bright with something that looked like pride. You understand what you're saying. If he releases these, you'll face judgment. People will talk. Let them talk. Emily's chin lifted. I'm tired of living in fear of Ryan Mitchell's opinions. He doesn't get to define me anymore. Jack's hands found her waist, pulling her close. Are you sure about this? Because once we commit to this path, there's no backing down. Ryan will escalate. Then we escalate faster. Emily surprised herself with the steel in her voice. You said you needed evidence of Mitchell Industries' corruption. Where is it? Mostly circumstantial right now. I need hard proof. Emails, financial records, something that directly ties the stolen technology to their company. And you think you can get that at the gala? Jack's expression shifted, calculation mixing with admiration. I know Mitchell's CTO will be there, Thomas Brennan. He's the one who actually implements the tech theft, but he's not a true believer. He does it because he's afraid of losing his job. If I can get him alone, away from Ryan and his father, I might be able to flip him. So we need him isolated, Emily said, her mind racing now. We need Ryan distracted. Emily. I'll distract Ryan. I'll respond to his email, tell him I want to talk before the gala, meet him somewhere public, somewhere I can record the conversation, let him think winning, let him gloat about the photos, and while he's busy trying to intimidate me, you corner Brennan. Jack stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You want to bait him. I want to destroy him. Emily felt the words settle in her bones, true and solid. These photos, there's nothing actually wrong with them. The only way they hurt me is if I act like they should. But if I refuse to be ashamed, if I stand there next to you and dare him to make them public. She trailed off, the plan forming as she spoke. He loses. Jack crossed back to her, his eyes bright with something that looked like pride. You understand what you're saying. If he releases these, you'll face judgment. People will talk. Let them talk. Emily's chin lifted. I'm tired of living in fear of Ryan Mitchell's opinions. He doesn't get to define me anymore. Jack's hands found her waist, pulling her close. Are you sure about this? Because once we commit to this path, there's no backing down. Ryan will escalate. Then we escalate faster. Emily surprised herself with the steel in her voice. You said you needed evidence of Mitchell Industries' corruption. Where is it? Mostly circumstantial right now. I need hard proof. Emails, financial records, something that directly ties the stolen technology to their company. And you think you can get that at the gala? Jack's expression shifted, calculation mixing with admiration. I know Mitchell's CTO will be there, Thomas Brennan. He's the one who actually implements the tech theft, but he's not a true believer. He does it because he's afraid of losing his job. If I can get him alone, away from Ryan and his father, I might be able to flip him. So we need him isolated, Emily said, her mind racing now. We need Ryan distracted. Emily. I'll distract.
The coffee shop was aggressively neutral. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, the kind of place that served lattes with foam art and played indie music at conversation volume. Emily chose a table near the window where the Saturday morning light streamed in, bright and unforgiving. She was wearing jeans and a simple cream sweater. No armor today. Just her, a hidden recording device the size of a button, and the knowledge that Jack's security team was stationed in a van 2 blocks away. Her phone buzzed. Jack, you don't have to do this. Say the word and I'll shut it down. Emily typed back. I'm doing this, for me. She ordered a chamomile tea she had no intention of drinking, and waited. Ryan arrived exactly on time, because of course he did. He walked in wearing designer athleisure, the kind that cost more than most people's suits, his hair perfectly tousled, his expression smug. He spotted her and smiled like a cat who'd cornered a mouse. Emily. He slid into the chair across from her without asking. I'm glad you came to your senses. She forced herself to meet his eyes. You didn't leave me much choice. That's the thing about choices, Ryan signaled the barista for an espresso. Sometimes people make them for you. Saves everyone time. Emily's hands wrapped around her teacup. What do you want, Ryan? What do I want? He laughed low and cruel. I want you to disappear. I want you to end this ridiculous charade with Reynolds and go back to whatever small, quiet life you were living before you decided to embarrass me at my wedding. Your wedding, Emily let the words hang. You mean the wedding where you publicly humiliated me during your toast? Oh, don't be so dramatic, Ryan waved dismissively. I was just having a little fun. You were always too sensitive. The recording device pressed against her skin, capturing every word. Emily breathed through the anger. The photos you sent, she said carefully. What do you want in exchange for not releasing them? Ryan leaned back, savoring his power. I want you to call a press conference. Tell everyone that your engagement to Reynolds is fake, that he hired you to make his ex jealous, or some pathetic story like that. His eyes glittered. Make him look desperate and foolish. Then disappear. And if I don't? Then those photos go to every media outlet in the city. Your new billionaire boyfriend will see exactly what kind of trashy past you're dragging into his pristine world. Ryan's smile sharpened. Men like Reynolds don't actually end up with women like you, Emily. You're a novelty, a project. Once he's bored, he'll discard you, just like I did. Emily felt the words hit, felt them try to burrow under her skin. But something had changed. She heard them now for what they were. Ryan's fear, not her truth. "You're scared of him," she said quietly. Ryan's expression flickered. "Excuse me?" "Jack, you're terrified of him." Emily leaned forward. "Your father's been trying to get a meeting with Reynolds Tech for months. That acquisition could save Mitchell Industries from the lawsuits piling up. But Jack won't take your calls now, because of me. You think pretty highly of yourself." "I think you're desperate," Emily held his gaze. "That's why you're threatening me with college photos. That's why you're here, trying to control something, anything, because you can feel it all slipping away." Ryan's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Emily's voice was steady now, certain. "How many companies has Mitchell Industries acquired in the last 5 years? Small tech startups with innovative ideas? And how many of those companies are still operational?" The color drained slightly from Ryan's face. "You bury them," Emily continued. "You and your father. You buy promising companies, strip their technology, and destroy them so they can't compete. That's not business, Ryan. That's theft. Be very careful what you're accusing me of." Ryan's voice dropped, dangerous. "You're out of your depth." "Am I?" Emily smiled, and it felt like power. "Or am I finally seeing clearly?" Ryan stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. Several patrons looked over. "You have until Monday morning to make this right, Emily. Call the press conference, end this thing with Reynolds, or I release everything. And trust me, I have more than just party photos." He leaned down, his face inches from her. "You were never good enough for me, and you're certainly not good enough for him. The sooner you accept that, the less this will hurt." Then he was gone, the door chiming as he stalked out. Emily sat there, her heart pounding, the recording device still running. She counted to 30, then texted Jack. "Got it. He confessed to the acquisitions." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Security confirms he's gone. You're clear. Meet me at the office." Emily stood on shaking legs, left cash on the table, and walked out into the bright morning. The van was exactly where Jack said it would be. She didn't look at it directly, just walked past and hailed a cab. 30 minutes later, she was in Jack's office, surrounded by Jack, Sarah, and 2 members of Jack's legal team who'd been listening to the recording in real time. "He's an idiot," Sarah said, pacing like a caged animal. "An actual certified idiot. Who threatens someone in a public place?" "Someone who thinks he's untouchable," one of the lawyers replied, a sharp-eyed man named Marcus Chen, who Jack had introduced as the best litigation attorney in the state. "We have Ryan on tape admitting to knowledge of the acquisitions and their outcomes. It's not enough to convict, but it's enough to start asking serious questions." "What about Thomas Brennan?" Emily asked Jack. "Were you able to talk to him?" Jack's expression was grim satisfaction. "Better. He's ready to flip. I met him at his daughter's soccer game this morning. Neutral territory, no Mitchell surveillance. Turns out he's been keeping insurance files for years. Emails, financial records, technical specifications, everything we need to prove Mitchell Industries has been systematically stealing intellectual property." Sarah stopped pacing. "He's willing to testify?" Jack pulled up documents on his tablet. "If we guarantee him immunity and protection." He's scared, he has a family, but he's also tired of being part of something corrupt. I offered him a position at Reynolds Tech, better pay, better benefits, and most importantly, a clean conscience. "So we have him," Emily said slowly. "We have Ryan on tape. We have Brennan's files. What's the play?" Marcus Chan exchanged glances with his colleague. "Normally, we'd build a case quietly, file complaints with the SEC, let them investigate, but given the timeline and Ryan's threats against Miss Carter," he paused. "We could go nuclear." "Define nuclear," Sarah asked. The gala is tomorrow night. 500 guests, including board members from Mitchell Industries, their major investors, and at least a dozen financial journalists. If we were to present this evidence publicly in that setting, it would destroy them, Jack finished. His voice was neutral, but his eyes were steel. Mitchell Industries would face immediate investigation. Their stock would tank. Every company they've ever acquired would have grounds to sue. It would be the end. The room went quiet. Emily thought about Ryan's face in the coffee shop, his casual cruelty, his absolute certainty that he could control her, diminish her, make her disappear. "Do it," she said. Jack turned to her. "Emily, once we do this, there's no going back. Ryan will know you helped. His family will come after you." "Let them." Emily's voice was firm. "I spent years letting Ryan make me feel worthless. I'm done. If we have the evidence to stop him from hurting anyone else, we use it." Sarah moved to Emily's side, taking her hand. "I'm with you, whatever happens." Jack studied Emily for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Pride, maybe, or recognition. "All right," he said finally. "Then we go to war." The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Marcus and his team compiled the evidence into a presentation, irrefutable, devastating, designed for maximum impact. Jack reached out to 3 journalists he trusted, giving them advance notice that something significant would break at the gala. Thomas Brennan was moved to a safe location with his family, his files secured, and Emily prepared for battle. Claire arrived at Jack's penthouse at noon on the day of the gala with what she called the nuclear option. It was a dress, if something that looked like liquid starlight could be called a dress, deep midnight blue that shifted to black depending on the light, with a neckline that was elegant but daring, and a silhouette that made Emily look like someone who owned boardrooms. Jack's instructions were very specific, Claire said, helping Emily into it. He said you needed to look like the most powerful woman in the room. "I don't know if a dress can do that," Emily murmured.
"The dress is just a reminder." Claire's eyes were kind. "You already are that woman. Now everyone else gets to see it." Sarah arrived an hour later in her own gown, emerald green that complemented her red hair. She took one look at Emily, and her eyes filled with tears. "Don't you dare," Emily warned. "You'll ruin your makeup." "You look like a queen about to destroy her enemies," Sarah said. "I'm allowed to cry about that." Jack emerged from his bedroom in a custom tuxedo that made Emily's breath catch. He stopped when he saw her, his expression shifting through several emotions before landing on something that looked like awe. "Emily," he said, his voice rough. "Too much?" she asked nervously. "Not nearly enough." Jack crossed to her, taking her hands. "You're devastating." The car arrived at 7. They rode in silence, Emily's hand clasped in Jack's, Sarah across from them providing commentary on her phone. "Twitter's already buzzing about you two. Mystery fiancé of tech billionaire to make first public appearance. You're trending, babe." Emily's stomach churned. No turning back now. "Would you want to?" Jack asked quietly. She looked at him, this man who'd stepped out from behind a bar to defend her, who'd given her the tools to fight back, who saw her not as something broken, but as something powerful. "No," she said, "I wouldn't." The gala was held at the Grand Marquis Hotel, the same venue as the wedding, which felt both fitting and surreal. The ballroom had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale, all gold and crystal and flowers that probably cost more than Emily's yearly salary. They arrived to a barrage of camera flashes. Jack's hand was steady at the small of her back as they walked the carpet. Emily smiled, chin high, remembering Claire's words. "You already are that woman." Inside, the crowd was everything she'd expected. Wealth and power and designer clothing, conversations happening in hushed tones that would reshape markets. She spotted Ryan immediately, standing near the bar with Madison, both of them dressed like royalty. Ryan's eyes widened when he saw her, then narrowed. He leaned to Madison, whispered something. Madison's head whipped around,
her expression poisonous. "They're making their move," Murder murmured. She'd positioned herself as Emily's wingwoman, scanning the room like security. "Let them," Jack said calmly. He guided Emily toward a cluster of board members, making introductions. Emily shook hands, made small talk, pretended her heart wasn't trying to escape her chest. Ryan approached after 20 minutes, cutting through the crowd with Madison trailing behind. "Reynolds." His voice was cordial, but his eyes were ice. "Emily, what a surprise to see you both here." "Is it?" Jack's tone was pleasant, deadly. "I was invited. Emily is my fiancée. Where else would we be?" Madison's laugh was sharp as glass. "Fiancée, right. Tell me, Emily, does Jack know about your colorful past, or were you planning to surprise him with those photos after the wedding?" Several nearby conversations paused. People were listening now. Emily felt the old instinct rise, to shrink, to apologize, to make herself small. She pushed it down. "You mean the photos of me at college parties?" Emily's voice carried, clear and unbothered. "Having fun with friends like a normal 20-year-old. Those photos?" Madison blinked, thrown. "Jack's seen them. I showed him myself, because unlike some people, I'm not ashamed of my past. I was young, I enjoyed my life, and none of that defines my worth." Ryan's face flushed red. "You don't understand what I'm doing," Emily interrupted. "I'm standing next to someone who respects me. You should try it sometime." "That's enough," Ryan hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Actually," Jack said, his voice cutting like a blade, "I think we're just getting started." He gestured to the stage, where a microphone stood waiting for the evening's announcements. "I believe it's time for the program to begin." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "What are you—" But Jack was already moving, Emily at his side, Sarah behind them like a guardian. They reached the stage just as the event coordinator was about to speak. Jack whispered something to her. She nodded, stepped aside. Jack took the microphone. The room quieted, hundreds of eyes turning toward the stage. "Good evening," Jack said, his voice amplified and absolute. "For those who don't know me, I'm Jack Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Tech. Thank you for allowing me to take a moment of your time tonight." Emily stood beside him, her heart hammering. She could see Ryan pushing through the crowd, his father, a silver-haired man with Ryan's same cruel eyes, right behind him. "I came to this event to support a worthy cause, but I also came because I believe in transparency, in truth. And tonight, I have some truths to share about Mitchell Industries." The room erupted in murmurs. The 3 journalists Jack had contacted moved closer, phones out, recording. Over the past 5 years, Mitchell Industries has acquired 17 small technology companies, promising startups with innovative ideas. They paid fair prices, made promises about growth and integration, but not a single one of those companies exists today. Ryan's father, Gerald Mitchell, reached the stage. "Reynolds, what the hell do you think you're—" Jack didn't acknowledge him. Instead, Mitchell Industries stripped those companies of their intellectual property, filed patents under their own name, and systematically destroyed any competition. They committed corporate espionage on a massive scale. "These are baseless accusations," Gerald roared. "I'll sue you for slander." "They're documented facts." Jack pulled out a tablet, and suddenly the screens positioned around the ballroom meant for displaying charity donation totals lit up with documents, emails, financial records, technical specifications with Mitchell Industries letterhead. The crowd pressed closer, reading. Emily watched faces shift from confusion to shock to outrage. "These files," Jack continued, "were provided by Thomas Brennan, your chief technology officer, who could no longer participate in fraud. They detail every acquisition, every theft, every company you destroyed." Gerald's face went purple. "Brennan is a disgruntled employee spreading lies." "Is he?" Emily stepped forward, taking the microphone from Jack. Her voice rang out, clear and strong. Because I have a recording from yesterday where your son admitted to knowledge of these acquisitions and their outcomes, where he explicitly stated that Mitchell Industries buries companies to eliminate competition. She pulled out her phone, connected it to the sound system. Ryan's voice filled the ballroom. You bury them, you and your father, by promising companies, strip their technology, and destroy them so they can't compete. His response: be very careful what you're accusing me of. Not a denial, a threat. The room exploded into chaos. Journalists rushed forward, shouting questions. Board members converged on Gerald Mitchell, demanding explanations. Ryan stood frozen, his face ash-white, as Madison slowly backed away from him. Emily stood on that stage, bathed in light, and felt no fear, only power. Jack's hand found hers, squeezing gently. You did it, he murmured low enough for only her to hear. We did it, Emily corrected. Below them, Ryan finally seemed to come back to life. He looked up at Emily, and for the first time, she saw something she'd never seen before in his eyes: fear. You destroyed me, his voice carried in the chaos. Emily leaned into the microphone one last time. No, she said simply. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. Security was escorting Gerald Mitchell out, the man still shouting threats and denials. Ryan followed, Madison nowhere to be seen. The journalists were a feeding frenzy, live streaming the documents, the quotes, the spectacular collapse of Mitchell Industries crumbling in real time. Emily turned to Jack as they stepped off the stage, his eyes blazing with something that looked like reverence. You're incredible, he said. Emily laughed, bright, free, unbroken. I'm finally just me. Sarah tackled them both in a hug. That was the most badass thing I've ever witnessed. I'm so proud I could burst. Marcus Chen appeared, grinning like a shark. The SEC will open an investigation by Monday. Mitchell Industries will be lucky to survive the week, and every company they acquired now has grounds for restitution. He nodded to Emily. You just changed a lot of lives tonight. Emily looked around the ballroom, at the people still reading the evidence, at the journalists broadcasting the truth, at the wreckage of the Mitchell family empire crumbling in real time. She'd walked into this room afraid, small, convinced she was not enough. She walked out of it powerful, vindicated, enough for herself and anyone who mattered. Jack's arm wrapped around her waist as they headed for the exit, ignoring the reporters calling their names. What now? Emily asked. Jack smiled, that real smile, the one from behind the bar. Now we go home, order terrible takeout, and figure out what comes next. For the investigation? For us. Emily stopped, turning to face him fully.